and thank you so much for joining me today for a chat about your latest release, Just Our Luck. I am so excited to talk to you and also to congratulate you on hitting the USA Today bestseller list.
Thank you. That was a wild surprise this morning.
How are you feeling?
I feel great. I keep refreshing it to make sure it's still there, but I put it on social media now, so hopefully it is. But Kennedy
Yeah.
Ryan tagged me in a post first thing this morning at like 7:30 a.m. and I was like, "Oh my gosh, a tag from Kennedy Ryan, my day is made." And then I saw what it was and even better. So, great
Yeah.
bookends to the day, starting with that and then ending talking with you.
Oh my gosh, that's so sweet. That's just incredible and so well deserved. I
Oh, thank you so
can't say
much.
enough about how much I love your work. I just think it's fantastic. Where are you in the world?
I'm in the middle of Iowa, so in Des Moines,
Wow.
Iowa. But I'm a military brat, so I grew up all over. I lived in Southern California. I was born in Japan and lived in London and have moved all over, but now settled in the middle of the country.
Oh, that is so cool. That's awesome. How long have you lived in Iowa?
It's been a long time now. I went to college here and then left for a while, and then I've been back since 2008, so it's 15, 16 years, something like that.
So I had read something too that you wrote your first book in second grade.
Yes.
I Hate You, and then you wrote a sequel, I Still Hate You, which I think is really funny. And just so fun. But I guess what sparked your love for writing and these stories at such an early age?
Yeah, that I'm sure was a class assignment from Mrs. Parsons or Mrs. James at Arnold Heights Elementary in Moreno Valley, California. But I've always loved to tell stories. And I think from when I was really little, I'm still on today. I like to make up stories. And it's better when you put them in a book. Otherwise, I guess it's just lying. All the good. But I've always loved to write. Those books when I was little. I wrote short stories in like middle school. I wrote really awful, truly horrendous poetry in high school and college. And then I went on to graduate school, and the writing I was doing was academic. So I always joke that when readers get through my backlist, they can go read my academic publications. There's a lot less kissing and a lot more statistics, but it's all there. Um, and so then, yeah, then I came back to writing fiction. But I've always loved writing and putting ideas down on paper. And then I don't know, that idea of just creating something from nothing. And I'm sure you have some of that, with acting and bringing a character to life. Like you are taking sort of this, I don't know, clay and kind of molding it into this fully formed human. And so many people are going to relate to. And I don't know, I've always just seen kind of beauty in that.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. And do you feel like growing up a military brat, like living in so many places, meeting so many people, is that kind of where you started gathering stories from? Is just in the people you meet and the experiences you had, or how did that start?
Oh gosh, I'm sure that was part of it. I think growing up in the military is you have to be very adaptable. I think lots of people grow up in that sort of space, but you always have to be able to kind of meet new people and new circumstances and roll with changes. And the Air Force doesn't move you around as some of the other branches do, but I think that helped. But I was always surrounded by creative people and probably people too who would listen to my stories. And so that helps as well. And I see that now. I have a young son, and just the way that he kind of is making sense of the world and telling stories and being creative and what it means for someone to kind of nurture that. I always had that in my family. And I think that that was probably even bigger than the flexibility of moving around so much.
That makes sense. And that's so lovely too that you had that support system who uplifted you and like encouraged you to be so creative. I think that that's just so fantastic. Well, so your first book released in second grade, technically, but your debut release for the world was How to Fail at Flirting, which I also just love. And during that
You?
time, that was like the early days of the pandemic, and so I was really
Yes.
curious what the experience was like for you and how you navigated marketing a book and just the everything that comes with the release of a book, and then
Yeah.
also writing during that time.
It's interesting because I think in some ways, and I think my fellow 2020 debuts would share this, or the 2021 debuts, it was kind of easier to market a book then because we didn't have that much to do. We were all on lockdown and closed in our houses, and everybody was reading because it was, something you could do safely and build community. And so in that way, it was much easier to market a book. Um, but I think living through that, to me, I think as an author makes me I don't know if I appreciate it and we appreciate it more than folks who got to do it before pandemic, but I didn't get to do an in-person event until my third novel, and my fifth book. Getting like physical copies of your book mailed to you was really like new and something we didn't experience. And I had a launch event for this book, and there were like 500 people there. And a friend of mine sent me a picture from my first launch event, which we did in a parking lot because it was December of 2020. We're all in our coats and gloves and 6 feet apart and like throwing copies of the book back and forth. And our party favors were these little individual wrapped Jim Beam bottles of whiskey that I
It's
still
so
keep on my
fun.
desk. Yeah. So, I don't know. How did any of us make it through that time? It seems so far away and like yesterday, but I do think it made me less precious about how I had to write. Because again, I have a young son now. He was very young then. He was preschool age. And so I wrote Do You Take This Man while on lockdown with Paw Patrol playing 24/7 right here. So I wrote all the adult scenes in that one first because I just needed some adult outlets.
Yeah.
And between Zoom calls and working from home. So um, I don't know that I would pick a different debut experience because I think I forged a lot of really great friendships there, and again, lots of people were reading, so it was kind of a great time to be a reader because we were all sort of escaping. But yeah, I don't know what to compare it to for other times, but it is fun to have both experiences and kind of get to see the gamut of what you're able to do with the book and the different ways you're able to write and how the stories come to you differently, in those different circumstances.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I just find that to be fascinating. You said it feels like yesterday, but also like 5 years ago. What, I guess, looking back on that time and your writing process, how has it changed? What are like some specifics of something that you do
Oh
now
yeah.
versus then? Like, I'm
Well, my
curious.
How to Fail at Flirting, which was my debut, and then The Fastest Way to Fall, which was my sophomore book. I wrote both of those before I ever had a publishing deal. And so, especially for How to Fail at Flirting, but really a lot with The Fastest Way to Fall too, I didn't know anybody was going to read it. There was a freedom in writing that because I was truly writing it for me, for fun, to have a creative outlet to put something on paper and just express myself and kind of dig out from what I felt was just kind of being buried in momming and work and life and everything. And this is pre-pandemic, but there was, yeah, freedom. I could take all the time I wanted, and I had, I could just sit down and dig into it and not really think about anything else. And now I still love the writing, but of course there's contracts and there's deadlines and your marketing and there's social media and there's other pieces. And so in some ways it was more fun to write back then because it really was a kind of a no consequence sort of style of writing. But it's a lot more fun now because people do read it and sometimes they pay you for it, and so that's kind of cool too. But in terms of my actual process, I don't know that that has changed a lot. I work full time still. I've worked in higher education for almost 20 years, and I love that. And so I haven't left that world. So my writing is usually at night, on the weekend. I have my coffee shops that I go to and dig into. I travel a lot, so I am really good at plopping down in a Marriott comfortable bed because I love their beds and knocking out a few chapters. So I'm really, again, not too precious about that writing process, like where I write. My only thing is that when I'm on deadline, the bag of Mike and Ike's gets larger and the mug of Diet Coke gets more substantial the closer I am to deadline.
Love Mike and Ike's.
They're
I was in
so
the
good.
airport the other day and I had them for the first time in a while. And I was like, why haven't I had these in a while? They are so good. Such an underrated
They
snack.
really
And
are. And they're so bad for your teeth, I'm sure, and so full of sugar, but they are so tasty.
I think everything, like at this point, it's like, what isn't bad for your teeth? So we might as
So
well just
true.
like enjoy it. Okay, so starting a new project, I'm curious if you start with the characters or with the plot, or if it's kind of a mix
Yeah.
of both.
It kind of depends on the book, actually. So for Just Our Luck, it actually started from a meme that a friend posted on Facebook of all places. Like, I'm never on Facebook, but I saw this meme that she'd posted, and it was something to the effect of, I don't need men. I just need $10 million dollars and a donut. And I thought that is an amazing title for a book. So the initial working title for this book was $10 million dollars and a donut. And I wrote down the meme and I wrote down kind of a sketch of the story. And then I set it aside for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, like quite a while. And when it was time to kind of start this is the first book in a new universe. And so I thought, you know what? What about the donut book? And so we pitched that and kind of put it together. And so with that one, actually, the premise came before anything, before I knew the characters or the setting. But for other books, I knew the characters like right off the bat. Like in Do You Take This Man, the heroine is a divorce attorney who performs weddings, and the hero's a dude bro wedding planner. And I knew those characters like immediately, even before I knew what the story was or the plot or the premise or anything. I knew kind of that would be their worlds that they would be coming from. So I'm a little chameleon like in that. It's usually the characters or the premise. It's not usually anything else that comes first. It'd be lovely if the plot came to me first, but that never happens. So then you have to work that out. But I'm a character writer. I love creating. I don't know, I probably had imaginary friends when I was little. I know I played with paper dolls and Barbies and had these elaborate worlds. And so the idea of creating characters and creating people and making them feel like fully fleshed out humans is kind of my favorite part. Unfortunately, it can't be the only part. So you have to put a plot in there. They have to do some things. But creating these people is, to me, that's a lot of the fun part is that.
Want to talk about all the characters that were in Just Our Luck because I think they all were so, like you said, just whole and fully fleshed out, and they had so much depth and they were so wonderful. And I could see them jumping off the page. I wanted to back up a few steps so you had the idea when you saw this meme on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know when an idea is the one versus like an idea that you're like, oh, I'm just gonna like put this in my back pocket? What's the indicator that you're like,
Yeah.
okay, this is an idea I'm really gonna spend time with?
Yeah, how do you know the idea is a good one? I don't know that you always do right off the bat. So I'm a spreadsheet girly. I love spreadsheets. I could do like a whole book on my love of spreadsheets. I won't, but I have a spreadsheet that's multi-tabbed and it's got all my ideas in there. And so if I have a new idea, I put it in there. I write anything I know, or if I want to start writing it, I'll do that and put it in its own file and link to it. But then I can always go back to that. So when it's time for a new project, I'll always go through my list and just see kind of what sparks. And that's always where I start from. Like, what idea just sparks for me and I'm excited about it. And then it's sitting down and like running the premise by some people. And if all of them are like, oh, okay, then it's probably not a great idea. But if they're sort of excited, then maybe working through a little bit of the plot or the story or what I think the characters would be. And then I have a whole team I run those things by too. So my agent, Sharon, is a really, really wonderful, I think, assessor of not only what sounds fun and interesting, but what's on the market right now. Like, what's the kind of hunger for this type of book, or what are folks looking for? And then my editor too, I've been with the same editor, Carrie Donovan at Berkeley, for all of my books. And so, pitching her ideas too to see what the publishers looking for. Do they have other projects that are similar to this that are in the works? So I think it's a mix of things, but I do have my group of friends that I look for a gut check with. And no matter all that planning and all those things that are in the back pocket, it's kind of like your TBR list for a book. Like, you have 30 sitting there that you're ready to read, but then something new and shiny walks by and you're like, oh, it's like that meme, like with the guy looking.
Yeah.
And so that's me too. Like, an idea will pop into my head in the shower and I'm like, but what if my full attention was on this random idea that just came to me? And I think a lot of creatives are like that, but I do always try, if I have an idea, even if I'm not sure if it's the one, I still try to write it down, because it might not be the one right now, but it might be great for a character I come up with later, or to roll into a different project, or sometimes to offer to a friend and be like, have you thought about this concept? I think you could write this really well.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me because I think in my mind it is that where it's like, oh, there's all these things you're like, well, you could write a book about this, or you could write a book about this, and how to kind of organize it and set it down and really find a focus. It's so interesting too that you love spreadsheets. I'm a spreadsheet person, and I feel like
Oh
a
my
lot of people
gosh.
aren't.
Have you read Ross Gay's Book of Delight or Book of More Delights?
No, but I've heard of it.
It's so good. It's a super fast read. I don't have it on my shelf anymore. It's over here. But he just wrote these short little essays, one a day for a whole year, about something that delighted him. And then he did it again through COVID and then curated them into this book. And it's so affirming to read, because some of them are very positive and other things are like, I'm so angry and I hate everything, but this cookie I ate today was really great. Anyway, so a local bookseller loves him and had all of the local book people write their own essays on delight, a la Ross Gay for his new book release. And I wrote one about spreadsheets and my favorite formulas and all the magic that can do. And I was amazed at how many people came up to me afterwards and were like, I love the essay. Have you tried this program? Have you tried this formula? Have you tried? There was so much enthusiasm for Excel.
I love that. That is so cool. And like, that's such a special thing too, finding kind of those joys in the day, even if it's like, this is a terrible day, but that cookie, like you said, was so, you're just like,
Yeah.
yes, like this is
Oh, it
what I
is truly
needed.
like one of the most affirming books I own. Like, I just recommend it to everybody because it's such a quick read too. And it's not a novel, it's just these short little essays you can read anytime. But
Yeah, I'm gonna look into it. Speaking of like favorite things though, I feel like love plus donuts plus fake dating plus like the best like wittiest banter ever and then a lottery ticket is just our luck plus 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 plus. Sybil Sweet, which I just love that play too of sweet. Like she is so sweet and then the
uh huh.
donuts are sweet. I feel like there's just such a blend of like the fun and chaotic energy. And she also has a big heart. Throughout the story, there's some heavier things of exploring her neurodiversity. How did you develop her unique traits and what inspired her
Yeah,
character?
yeah. It's interesting for Sybil's. I love Sybil and I love her for all the things you just mentioned. Like, she is by her family and maybe by herself and probably by some readers described as chaotic. And I guess in some ways she is, but it's more I think in how she approaches the world and she's figuring herself out. And I loved writing her. She was really hard to write. She's very unlike me. I'm actually a lot more like the hero. I'm usually the grumpy one in a situation, and Sybil is the sunshine, like it's grumpy sunshine. And so for her character, I think really was built in layers. As I went through the story, I was thinking about not only like how would this type of person react to winning the lottery and why would they be a fake why would they fake date, because why does anybody fake date? It's the most like ridiculous premise, even though it's one that we all love as romance readers. And thinking about like what in her personality would lead to this. And then for me, some of those pieces were what was going on in the world. And I feel like as I'm in my early 40s and I've seen so many friends and people I know and colleagues find their ADHD diagnosis as adults. Because as she quotes in the book, and I got I read a wonderful book that I quote in the book that was ADHD for Smart Ass Women.
Yeah.
And that's a great book, but she talks about some of the statistics and unpacks how women are less likely to be diagnosed in childhood and depending on your age and all of those things. And anyway, that's sort of how I figured out that she'd also be having this journey to figure out why she is this way, that she feels like I can never get things right. And so I'm just going to rely on luck. And I think in some ways that lends to her kindness and her sweetness and her fun. Like she's really fun, but also paints a little bit harder picture of she feels like she's never meeting expectations and she never will. And the hero, Kieran's character, comes about and really thinking about who is the most unlikely person to make her believe that she's actually perfect the way she is. And in the end, he is totally that person. Although when you meet him, well, maybe when you first meet him, you might believe that. But then after that, he's grumpy and he's type A and tunnel visioned. And that's, I don't know, that's a little bit how Sybil came to be. She's not based on any one person. I don't usually base my characters on real people, but I did like pull from a lot of wonderful people I know who have that same energy and who have that same, have had some of those same journeys and trying to figure out, oh no, like this is how I approach the world. And if I know this about myself, here's some of the power I can unlock.
Absolutely. And I think something that I really loved that I had noted quite a few times while I was reading Kieran and Sybil, their relationship, it just felt really organic and healthy in the way of they weren't trying to change each other. Like you were saying, like their individual traits highlighted each other and helped them be the best version of themselves, the way that they
Mm-hmm.
already were. And I thought that that was just so beautiful. And so, how did you approach writing their dynamic and their banter and building this chemistry when they are just so different?
Yeah. Um, I think part of it is thinking about how they react to one another, right? Like that's the interaction is less important than how somebody feels after it or reacts to it. And for me, with these two, in so many ways, it's like they're bouncing off each other because their energies are so different. And so thinking about that, and actually, I have not written a lot of Grumpy Sunshine because when I'm a reader, I don't like when the characters deeply change. Like the one character at the beginning doesn't believe in time and doesn't wear shoes, and the other character like hates everybody. And then by the end, the sunshine is like a CEO at a Fortune 500 company and wearing a black suit, and the other one is like walking the beach and looking for seashells. Like, I think that's fun to imagine, but personally, I'm always like rooting for the grump, and I don't want them to have to change their energy. So, for me, I knew I didn't want them to change necessarily how they were moving through the world, but I wanted them to change how they saw themselves in it, and how they viewed kind of their own role in society and with their friends and with their family. And for Sybil, seeing that she is valuable, like that she can make serious contributions, that she is the perfect version of herself and she has skills and talents. And I think for Kieran, it was almost a freedom to realize he doesn't have to be perfect. That expectation is one he's put on himself and that he can let it go. But to me, yeah, it's not that they change each other, but I think they really change how each other sees themselves. And that's a more subtle change, I think. But if I think back on relationships that I've had in my life, those have definitely been the most powerful kind, where someone helped me see a new dimension of my own character.
So I wanted to ask what your favorite part about their dynamic was, about writing their
Oh,
dynamic.
yeah. Um, Oh gosh, there's so many things. I hadn't reread this in quite a while actually, because we finished editing it about 6 or 7 months ago,
Oh yeah.
and I listened to the audiobook. That's the only way I ever reread my books is through audio. And so I was listening to the characters, and one of my favorite scenes is right after they've started faking it, and to not put too many spoilers on it, she has accidentally robbed him. It's a whole thing. So he's in his grumpiest self. She's in her sunshiniest self, and they have to appear on this local news show. And so they're like bickering at each other and fighting, but also clearly like interested in each other. And he gives her this super offhand compliment that he probably doesn't even realize he's giving it to her. And I think it just encapsulates the whole bud of their relationship. And so they're waiting to go on this TV show, and they've just been fighting. And she's like fixing her dress, like she's straightening it and kind of fixing herself. And he's like, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "I want to look good when we sit down." And he's like, "You always look fine." And he says it really brusquely, but it's just this moment where she's like, "Oh, like he noticed." And he's giving this subtle compliment. I don't know why that scene just warms my heart. And that was actually based on one of our local news shows here. And so I was on the show, had been on the show before, and I was on there and got to tell them, like, "You guys are in the book." Like, these are your characters. They were standing right there during that scene. But yeah, I just, that kind of subtle energy, and he's not like the swoony romance hero of your dreams off the bat. Like, he's terse and grumpy and tunnel visioned on his work. But he's still, even through all that, and even when he's actively fighting with her, gives her this compliment and is noticing these nice things about her. And I think that is a lot of who he is. And I don't know, that's just one of my favorite scenes. It's a small one, but I think that summarizes a lot of their early energy really well.
So sweet. That's funny. I picked up on that scene too, just because it's funny and interesting, funny in like an interesting way, how different people pick up on things and you don't even realize what's important to them. Of like, oh wow, like you just said I look fine, but like thanks for noticing. Like I needed that today. And
Yeah.
I thought the family dynamics and this
Yeah.
multi-generational aspect of the book that you included too added so much depth. I wanted to talk about the pressure, like you said, that she was feeling, and I felt so much empathy for her and that feeling of like I'm just not getting anything right. How did you decide how to weave that in and the moments that you chose to
Sure,
write to
sure.
show that?
Well, yeah, Sybil's family is like a family of, it's her mom and her sister, and her dad is out of the picture. Her dad is written as fairly ADHD coded. We never meet him. You don't know his diagnosis, but he's left the family. And then her mom and her sister are very much, again, like type A, very organized, like they move through pretty linearly, high achievers, and that's in part why Sybil has just felt like she's never measured up. Her sister's getting married, and she feels like just a lot of pressure to not embarrass her sister at the wedding and to try to do things right. She's always trying to do things right. So I tried to show scenes with the family where we still got the family dynamics. Like, they're not a family of supervillains. Like, they're not evil people or anything like that, even when they say things that end up being hurtful to our heroine. So I tried to show what I thought would feel like a real family dynamic and think through, how can I show that they care about each other, that they still love Sybil, that I think especially her sister, like, is really looking out for her and in her corner, but just that she is sort of misunderstood in her family. And so, you see them over dinner and you see her comparing herself to her sister and her sister's fiance, and just see sort of that family dynamic where you get this joy and wonder and happiness, but then you also get criticism, or what Sybil feels like is dismissal. So it was kind of showing those moments, but trying to make it feel real and authentic. And again, in coming up with the family, especially Sybil's family, it was sort of thinking about where would she come from? Where would this character have grown from? And what forces might have shaped her into being who she is? And that was kind of part of how that developed. I love writing side characters. It's one of my favorite things in the process. And so in my head, I've like written love stories for all of my side characters. So I kind of know how the mom and the stepdad met, and how Grace, her sister, and her fiance Warren met. They're both dentists, a dentist and orthodontist. And on Kieran's side, if they have kind of a different dynamic, but his he and his sister were abandoned by their mom, who was an addict at the time and was raised by his grandfather. And that's why he's back running this donut shop for his grandfather after he's been sick, leaving medical school for that. And so I was thinking too, with his family, how can we show again that same love and concern and care, but give a sense of why he feels like he has to hold it all together? And I think you get some of that from that oldest child mentality, from having to grow up pretty fast as a young person, and all of those pieces kind of wind in. But I don't know, I also just think the people that we surround our characters with can show like a nice compliment to them. Like Kieran's family is fun. Like Kieran's family embraces Sybil like immediately, because they are a fun family, and he is probably the most grumpy among them. But they get to be the people who can bring him out of his shell a little bit, until he meets Sybil, who can kind of really bring him fully out of his shell. That's more than what you asked. I could ramble a little bit here, but
Oh my gosh, have you heard my questions? I'm sorry, I ramble. So no, I love it. I love like it's almost like when people like just understand you through the autocorrect. Like I think that's how I
yes,
word my questions.
exactly.
I'm getting there. I'm like, do you know what I'm trying to ask? No, I love it so much. And I love that you also love to create hash out the love stories of the side characters, because
Yes.
I would be really interested to read Marcus and Lila and their dynamic. And I was curious, that was a question of mine, if you had considered taking them into their own book, or if that was something for the future that you would ever consider.
Yeah, I thought about it. I don't know if I have enough for their story for a whole novel. I'll probably write like a novella or a short story. I'll write something for theirs, because theirs is going to be a story of like he's very innocent, she is not. They're going to come together, and I think it'll be a love lessons kind of story. Because in the background of this book, and actually in the background of the next book, you see their relationship like fully cook. So there's no surprises there. Like these two get together, but I love that they are just background players, and you just periodically see them in the background of scenes until you're like, oh no, they're dating. So
Yeah.
the next book is actually Deacon's book, who is one of Sybil's roommates. He's a veteran. He's we would call him a rake in romance circles. He's kind of a ladies' man, kind of a f boy. I don't know our audience how much we can
Oh,
for
yeah.
language. So yeah, the next book is his, and it'll be a best friend sister, best friend sibling kind of story.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's how I come up with the side characters, is I figure out what would be their love story. What's the love story that would have or will shape them? So the grandfather, I kind of know his, and the grandfather's best friend, Tom. Like I would love to write the story of them in their 20s meeting these women they fell in love with, and um or maybe I don't know, the people they meet in their 70s, but
That's so sweet. No, I would read every single one. I'm sat for all of them. Yeah, I love that so much. And again, like I feel like I've maybe said already, or if I haven't, hopefully it'll come out, that I just think these characters are so wonderful and
oh,
so
thank
whole.
you.
And I think that's like one of the most fascinating things about writing to me, is how the world building and how they all come together and all feel so whole. Even if, like you said, we kind of just see them in the background with Marcus and Lila, like they're dating, and then
Yeah.
it's like oh, now we really know that they're dating. And even though we don't learn much more than that, it's like, oh, but actually, I really loved them and really enjoyed reading them. Building romantic chemistry. How do
Mm-hmm.
you have any like techniques or what is your process for kind of hashing that out and developing that between two characters?
Yeah. I think it starts with knowing who the characters are and what do they want. What do they want and what do they need? And how is this other person going to, in the short term, stop them from getting what they want? Or, be a roadblock for them getting what they want? And then ultimately, how will they provide them what they need? So I think if you know that as you're crafting, then you can throw all kinds of things at these two characters. And the tension builds because the other person is in the way of character A getting what they want. But I think the tension also builds because we can quickly see how character B is going to give them exactly what they need. And then I think that builds tension, which helps with the chemistry. Beyond that, though, to me, I think some of it just builds thinking about them as real people. And so, how would somebody genuinely react to this moment or this flirtation or this touch? Because that's really different for different characters. And then how I always come back to how does the other person make them see themselves? And I think that's true in all my books. Like ultimately, they know they're in love. That chemistry really sparks when they realize that this person makes them see themselves in a new light, and they're seeing things they didn't know were there before. And I don't know if I have a better way to describe it than that. I should. I'm a writer. It's what I do for my career. But I don't know. I think that that's part of it. And of course, there's the physical chemistry and there's that. But I think the physical chemistry is a byproduct of what you've set up for the emotional chemistry. And even with these two, I don't think it's much of a spoiler because it happens in like chapter 3, but they get to it like quickly. And even then, they don't know each other really well, but they've had this short conversation. They've been talking for a couple of hours. And even then, you see a little bit of what they need. He needs distraction. She wants distraction. And then how they kind of get in each other's way. And so even though they've just met, you still get some of that chemistry and spark because you get a hint of how good they could be for each other. And then you have to wait a while till it sparks again. But I think chemistry is interesting and it's so different for different readers. Some folks, especially if you relate to the one of the main characters, I think you experience that chemistry differently than if you're sort of seeing it from afar.
Yeah, no, for sure. What do you hope that readers take away who do see themselves in Sybil or in Kieran? What would be your hope for them?
Oh, I hope, and I've talked to so many readers so far that see them more, they see themselves in Sybil. And what's been so amazing about that is the way people have shared, like, I have felt that way, or I've seen myself that way, and I love her journey and how she comes to love herself. And I think that's really what I hope for at the end of any of my books is someone sees that they deserve a love story, whether they see themselves in the character or the love interest, or whether they, have lived that life or they've faced that hardship. I think at the end of a romance, at least for the ones I write, that's what I want people to see is I deserve a love story. Like people like me deserve a great and sweeping romance, no matter who we are, kind of what we've been through or what hurt we've been touched by or what we've done, that we deserve a love story and we deserve to have somebody see ourselves as lovable. And so, especially for this book, and I think especially for folks who really relate to Sybil, especially, I hope that that's true, that if folks don't already see that in themselves, that they're affirmed that they are deserving of that and that no matter how they move through the world, how their brain works, how their body size is, whatever it is, that they get to have a love story and we all do
That's so
if we want one.
beautiful. Oh yeah, no, I think that's so beautiful and it's just so yeah, I think that's beautiful.
Thank you.
Made lemon blueberry donuts and they're cooling right now to celebrate the book and
Oh my
I've
gosh, that
been
makes me so happy.
and that's like all I'm smelling and so we're talking about the book and we're talking about all the characters and I'm smelling these donuts and like I want to mail you one of them and I don't know if they're gonna be good but I'm like I just love it.
Definitely want to see a photo because lemon blueberry is the thing in this book and it is like what the special donut for the characters and I am a horrible baker so I am
Maybe.
so deeply impressed.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you. I have high expectations for them because of how good they smell right now. Yeah. I was curious what you learned from, you know, publishing the first book, that release, and,
Oh, yeah.
all those things to now. What you wish you knew, or what advice you would give to aspiring authors that you're like, this is just
Oh,
something that I had no
yeah.
idea of.
There's a lot. Gosh. The advice I give to authors, I never even say aspiring authors, because if you've written something, you're an author.
Oh yeah.
Aspiring published authors, perhaps. But
Yes.
the advice I give is different based on who folks are. The number one thing is never read your reviews, which, as far as I know, every author says, yes, that's great advice, and then immediately ignores it, which is what I did when I was a new author. And I thought, I can take criticism. I grew up in academia. This is great. And there are still like negative reviews from 5 years ago. I could read to you like word for word from memory. Like they live rent free in my head. And that's when I was like, you know what? That's not worth it. So that's probably the best advice I would give. And not because you don't care about what people have to say, because I think we all do. I think it's more that when you write a book and you publish a book, it goes out into the world and then it's for public consumption. It's not yours, like just yours anymore. And then I think it's helping yourself to understand that some people will love this book and it will live with them in their soul. And some people will hate this book so deeply they would prefer to burn it. I mean, hopefully they buy a second copy and burn that too, because let's get the dollars. But, I think you almost put up a little bit of a shield for yourself, or figure out how to protect your own mental health and your own creativity, knowing that sometimes there's negative feedback and you roll with it. And then in there's also really positive feedback and you roll with that too. So again, that's the advice I give to all authors that all of us ignore, but don't read the comments, don't read the reviews. But the other piece I think to any writer is to just keep going. And again, I'm sure you've seen this in your career too, like there are so many places where you could stop. There are so many points where you hit a wall, or you get rejected, or something doesn't go right, or something falls through. There are so many times when you could quit, and it would be easy to quit. But to keep going, like to find your bliss and to find your joy in what you're doing, and keep doing it in the way that makes you happy and fulfilled. Because again, that's not just with writing, that's not just with acting, that's in every job I've ever had and every student I've ever worked with. There are so many times when you could stop, and then at every point is deciding, do I really want to stop, or do I want to try for the next thing? Because you can. And that I think is really important just in life. I don't know. I think that's probably my global advice. I feel like I'm a senior person now that I get to dispense that, but keep going or stop. Like if you want to stop, then do it. But know that if you want to keep going, you can. And that there are more horizons past this one.
That's incredible advice, I think, and I totally relate to it. I totally understand it. And I love also, I feel like maybe that should be something you put on Instagram is keep going or stop. Like, or stop. Like, keep going or stop. That's it.
Like it's up to you. You get to
Yeah.
decide.
No, but I think that's perfect, and that's such beautiful advice. And I'm sure so many people are going to take so much from just our luck and from Sybil. And I think even Kieran, like his, the expectations and the things that he almost takes for himself, and that people are like, whoa, like nobody else is like saying you have to do this by yourself. And like he's like, oh, but I said it, and I think that's something that
Yes.
like I've even been opening up in myself about in the past couple years, being the oldest daughter, of like, why do I think this is my responsibility alone?
Exactly.
So I just think that's wonderful advice for writers, and wonderful, there's so many wonderful things in your books that I think people will take from. I'm curious, do your students read? Do any of your students read your work? Or at least
They
tell you
have.
they do?
So I worked in administration, and now I don't work with students much on the daily, but for 15 years I worked in administration with students, and I would teach here and there. I actually taught a really wonderful class on romance novels as tools to interrogate social
Mm.
justice topics. And that was a lot of fun because we were reading. I didn't assign my books, but they could read my books if they wanted to. But we read all kinds of romance novels and talked about the genre, and we used that as the lens to examine, these aspects of social justice and representation. But yeah, some of my students have read the books, which is fun. Actually, my university bookstore had them on an end cap. It's the worst Instagram photo I've ever posted, but I was late for a meeting and I was running across campus and I cut through the bookstore and all of my books were on an end cap, and so I snapped a selfie really quick while I was running, because that was just a really cool moment. Because that's also where I went to school, and so yeah, some of my students have, some of my colleagues have, a lot of my family have, and I think my one moment I had where I was like, wait, what? Was when my great uncle, he's since passed, but he was in his late 80s, early 90s, I think. And my mom said, oh, Uncle Herm read the book. And I was like, oh, cool. And I didn't think much about it. I assume he bought it. And then she forwarded me an email from him, and it was like notes, not like critical notes, but like deep notes. Like he read
Oh
the
my
book, and I was like, this would be so awkward over Thanksgiving.
goodness.
So yeah, I don't keep it a secret. Like my colleagues are super supportive. They've always been at my launch events and have read the books, and have been there to cheer and shout. And I think working at a university, it's actually been a really neat way to talk about a lot of topics with students who are maybe just interested in books. It's a way to start that conversation. But also with so many people want to write and publish, and especially for romance, I found there were so many people who were reading romance and loving romance and not talking about it because it's not smart, it's not literary. And the story I always share is that when I started reading romance again as an adult, I always had a copy of The Goldfinch on my phone. And if somebody asked what I was reading, I was like, oh, I just started The Goldfinch, which was accurate because I did read the first chapter. But what I was actually reading was all these romance novels. But I was like, oh, I don't know if I can talk about that. And then I started and just saw how many people were loving these books and how much they had to say and how much depth they had. And so I just started talking about it at full volume, not like yelling it inappropriately in weird situations, but and finding the number of people who were excited to get into the genre. And I think that's so powerful because it's not a genre of women, but it is a genre that has historically centered more women than any other genre. And to see so much power in that, and the level of representation and the power of queer romance, and the vast like depth of Black romance and Latina romance and all of these different places where people could see themselves, and to be able to share that and shout that, for me as an educator was so wonderful. And to have, I've never gotten negative feedback on it. Like, I don't know that I would, but it doesn't negate my PhD. It doesn't negate all these years of education I've had. But I think in some ways it enhances it. It's made me a better storyteller.
No, that's incredible. And I love that you have a shelf at your university. Is there like any experience that you could share with a student or a colleague who came and talked to you about your work, and if it was just a beautiful moment or something that was
Oh gosh.
memorable?
Yeah, there have been many, and now I'm trying to like think of what, this one was really sweet. It was just more memorable because it was fairly recently. A colleague of mine who is incredible, she teaches the human sexuality class on the campus, and she comes up with just really wonderful, inventive ways to get students talking about and understanding this as kind of an academic area as well as like their own personal area. And so anyway, I popped in to see her about something, and she was meeting with a grad student, and she said, oh, this is Denise Williams. She actually wrote one of the books we talked about in class. And the grad student who I'd not met before turned around and was like, oh, that was you? You wrote that? And like that, those moments have happened before, but it was just like such a, like I knew the class she was TAing for because I've spoken in that class before, and Amy's amazing. And so like just to see that reaction just gives you like the feels. I don't know. I think that doesn't happen a ton as an author, but when it does, it's just sort of like all the affirmation you need in life that, oh my gosh, somebody read my words and they like them. And the other one actually isn't a colleague, but it just happened the other day, and I was so moved by this. I'm in Des Moines, and I had a big launch event on Tuesday when the book came out, and Allie Hazelwood flew up for that, and that was super fun. And then another bookshop in town, Story House Book Pub, did a boozy donut brunch. And so it was a smaller, it was a more intimate event, and my parents came for that one. And they said, oh, are we going to be the oldest people there? And I was like, oh, maybe. But they weren't. And there was a woman who came up to me right when I came in and said, I'm 71 years old, and I just got my ADHD diagnosis. And was telling me about what it meant to like read that in the book and for her and what that journey was like. And I was just like, oh my gosh. And then her husband was there, and he had been a baker his whole career, and had baked donuts. And so I was like, oh, you don't tell me if I got the baking things wrong in the book. He's like, no, 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 you did okay. So they were so sweet, but like to talk with her about what that meant, and I don't know, to me, that's just such a big thing that I didn't expect as an author that so many people would share so much of their stories with you. And I say every time somebody's in my DMs saying what it meant to read about this character, this struggle, like I save those. I put them in a file, not a spreadsheet, but I put them in a file because I just am so honored that folks would share with me like that journey, no matter what the book is, like that they've gone through this thing or they've been seen in this way and how they overcame it. And I don't know, for me, it's just affirmation that all of us are living our own romance novel, our own action novel. We're all the heroes in our own story, and that like everybody has that story of which they're the hero too.
That's so beautiful and so lovely, and I love that. And I love that. I feel like that's becoming more and more commonplace, I guess, with social media and those online
Mm-hmm.
connections and the ability to reach out and DM and say like, "Hey, I read this and this like really resonated with me." And I just think that's really fun. I really love hearing those stories and hearing about the experiences of, all the people that you're moving with your work. And so I just think yeah, that's incredible. And I wanted to ask how readers can keep up with you, keep up to date with your
Yeah.
work, and connect with you like that.
Sure. I'm most active on Instagram. I'm on Threads and Blue Sky as well. I have a TikTok account. My videos look like they are posted by a 40-year-old. So I don't know, tread with caution. But I'm Nick Will Writes on all of those platforms, NICWILL Writes. And you can find me at DeniseWilliamsWrites.com is my website. And those are really the best ways to reach me. I'm on social media a lot, so it's pretty easy to find me there. And then on my website, there's a contact us button as well. And yeah, I would say, I guess I can't speak for all authors, but all the authors I know, if you want to tell somebody that you love their book or that their book touched you in some way, like I don't know anybody who doesn't love hearing those stories and isn't moved and motivated by knowing that. So I think if you're worried about saying it, like go ahead and say it. If they don't like it, then they're a jerk. So
Yeah. That's so exciting. And I will make sure to tag all of those, even the TikTok, because I watched a lot of your TikToks and I think they're
okay, I love it.
fantastic. What are you currently reading and loving?
Yes. Well, I'm finished with it now, but When Javi Dumped Mari is Mia Sosa's new one. I got to submit a blurb, so I got to read this one early. It is so good. It is friends to lovers. You get dual timelines. It is everything I love in a romance. There's so much like sexiness and tension, and it's genuinely funny. It's fantastic. I also totally on like a completely different side of the spectrum. I just finished Ask Not by Maureen Callahan, which is about the Kennedys. And I don't know if I don't know the accuracy of anything she's writing about, but she was told the story in a really engaging way about women who have been very well known or very forgotten. And I thought, I just finished the audio of that one and enjoyed listening to it. I mean, it's not like a happy read, it's pretty depressing, but also just like a beautiful storytelling.
Amazing. They're immediately going on my TBR. That's my selfish question at the end. I'm like, so what are you really reading and loving right now? And then also, where are some of your favorite independent bookstores? A moment to shout them out.
Oh my gosh, there's so many. Well, locally here in central Iowa, Dog Eared Books in Ames, and if someone wants signed copies of any of my books, they have a website up. They can do signed copies and personalized. And then Storyhouse Book Pub. We have so many great independent bookstores actually right here in Des Moines. But I love Steamy Lit in Florida, and they're in a new Tampa location and then in Deerfield near Fort Lauderdale. And then, of course, like the Rip Bodice, which is in Brooklyn, and they have one in the LA area as well, Culver City, I think.
Yes.
And then there's so many like romance bookstores. Grand Gestures in Portland has opened recently, and Catherine is amazing. And if folks are up there, she does weddings in the store. Like, it's amazing. Go see it. So those are a few that come to my head. I'm sure I forgot about 7,000 that I love, but independent bookstores are amazing. And they're just such special places, not just to get books, but I am in so many of them, and there's so much community there, and like they bring people together in a way that's, I think, so important in our communities. And same thing with libraries, that it's where we gather to talk about books and to get books and to kind of be together. And there's just such a service that they do for the community. So if you can get your books from an indie bookstore, they're all wonderful.
I love it. No, I second that message, and I think especially those independent bookstores and the romance bookstores that are popping up everywhere, which is so
Yes.
fantastic. I feel like they curate that bookstore experience to readers and writers in such a unique way that just pulls you in and feels so comforting and cozy, and I love it. So thank you also for those spotlights. Is there anything that I didn't ask about your writing journey or you or just our luck that you want to share that
Oh
I can
gosh.
ask a solid question about?
I don't know. Like, I hope folks read it and it like sparks some interesting conversation. I think there is a content warning at the beginning, but or not content warning, author notes anyway about what you can expect in the book. But I think if you are bothered by people who are chaotic, like buckle up because Sybil is chaotic and she makes some decisions that you're like, oh my gosh. I don't know if people still say they're cringe, but I think they will make you cringe regardless. Um, and so I think that's helpful to know going in, but that's intentional. Like, and that really is, if you look at those traits with love, I think you will love this character. Or you won't. That's okay because I won't read the reviews. But that's the main thing I can think about. I mean, I think you could see across my books, I always center women of color, very often like fat and plus size women of color. And sometimes that's the story, and sometimes it's just the character. For Sybil, it's just the character. And I don't know, go buy a lottery ticket if you want and hedge your bets. I bought one the day the book came out. I did not win, but I had a donut
Oh,
and it
wow.
was delicious. So I think the scales were evened out.
I think so too. And no, I think that's like you said, looking at Sybil with love, and I think her journey was so powerful and so impactful. And I found myself so empathetic towards her because I think, like you said in the beginning, it's like there's so many things that you're like, oh my gosh,
What are you
like
doing?
yes, but like in a way that you're like, okay, what's going on? Like it does make you think like, okay, why? Like, where is this going? Like, it's almost that rock bottom in some moments where, she accidentally stole the donuts and then she was late and then she didn't get the job that she was really hoping for, that I think we all were really hoping for too, because we were like, yes. And then just those feelings of those conversations with her family who weren't villains, like you said, but they just didn't quite see her. And it
Yeah.
just thing after thing, you're like, I'm really rooting for her. I think through all of it, I think I hope that yeah, I think other people feel this way too. It's like it's to the point where you're like, I'm really rooting for you to like do this for yourself and like pick yourself up and try again. And I loved the lottery ticket and the donut where it was like, for right now we're gonna stop. We're gonna keep going and stop. And right now we're gonna stop and just have
Yes,
this. But
exactly.
I no, I thought it was such a beautiful story, and there was so much depth to Sybil through her family and through her friends and through her new relationship that just she blossomed, and I thought was so beautiful to read and to experience the story and their characters that I am sad to have closed the book and left for a while, and so I'm happy. I'm so excited we got to talk about them and kind of for me revisit them and pick your brain about your process and how it all came to be. So thank you so much for joining me today and
Well, thank you for
talking to me
having
about
me.
it.
This was super fun. And we can talk spreadsheets offline because I don't know that everybody else is as interested in that. But no, this was a blast and so much fun. And I'm again excited to hear how the donuts taste. I'm sure they do smell absolutely amazing. And I've eaten so many donuts in the last few weeks that's saying something. That donuts still sound really good. So yeah, thank you for having me on and for reading it. And I can promise you do get to see these two again in the next book, in Deacon's book. We'll get to see
Yay.
what they're up to a little bit.
That's fantastic. I guess really quick too, I wanted to ask now that we were talking about donuts, is there a donut that you're like, okay, you have just our luck. Now you need, buy yourself a little lottery ticket. Even if it doesn't win, it's just kind of it's the vibe. What kind of donut is there? Like a flavor you're like, this is the
Oh,
book.
I think for the one that is the book, it is like, I don't know if you prefer cake or glazed, but it's strawberry frosted with sprinkles. Like, I think that's the classic. It matches the cover of the book, but I think there's just so much like sweetness and energy, and it's gonna like you're gonna drop some sprinkles because that's what happens, and it gets a little messy. But actually, my favorite donut is kind of a boring one. It's an old fashioned like sour cream donut, the kind that look like they explode in the fryer, or they kind of do explode in the fryer.
I
Um,
love those.
those
Those
are
are
my
my
favorite, even
favorite.
though
They're
I've
so good.
I've taken pictures of a lot of donuts for this book, and those do not look amazing in photographs, at least not any of the ones that I took. But I think that if you're a frosted with sprinkles would really represent the book. But I mean, is there a bad donut? I don't think that there is. So have any donut you want while you're reading it, but you probably will be hungry if you like donuts.
I have the physical copy coming and I want to go get a donut to celebrate. So that is what I will get. That'll be
Ooh, that
perfect.
sounds good.
So thank you. But yeah, thank you so much. I can't thank you enough. And especially for my messy, chaotic energy today of just the excitement and the donut vibes that I keep getting. And yeah,
These were
thank you so
absolutely perfect
much.
donut vibes. Thanks again.